Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Justice. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
I feel like I haven't been here for weeks in person.
I feel that way as well, but I've been holding the fort down.
Thank you so much. Certainly good to be seated here with you, Jade, and to our listeners, thank you so much for your continued support. We get the messages on our social media platform, the YouTube page, and our WhatsApp saying that you're enjoying the show. We are certainly pleased and honored that you can stick with us every Tuesday despite the fact that you have other choices out there. We appreciate your input. We appreciate your views always and continue to watch us grow as an organization, but also continue to watch the show grow as well.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Excellent.
Now, for those who are following the news cycle, there are several items up for discussion today. And one of them remains a topical issue, which is going to be the focus of the show, which is around what is the tabling process for tabling reports from the Auditor General and the Integrity Commission. I laugh because it is so ironic that we're talking about a body that is the constitutional authority, been given constitutional authority in the Constitution, which is the Auditor General, a constitutional body, independent. The Integrity Commission is a commission of Parliament, again, independent. It ought to be secured in the Constitution, but not yet. But we're having a discussion where the House Speaker can make a unilateral decision that is somehow sacrosanct above it all for the parliament, and us the people should sit back and allow it. Jeanette Calder wrote a very, very good article, Gordon Robinson as well, some weeks ago. We saw the press releases from National Integrity Action. So we're going to be joined by the founding director of National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe, and we're also going to be joined by Executive Director of Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, Jeanette Calder, to discuss the tabling process, what the legal premise is that perhaps the House Speaker is guided by, and so on. But before we get into the discussion, last week, over the weekend, there was a video that emerged on social media. Can you describe that video for us, Jade?
The description is the loss for words. I just showed you there. But essentially, the video showed, I think, about 5 officers of the JCF detaining, arresting. I don't know what procedure they were trying to carry out with an 11-year-old boy that involved what was a shockingly excessive display of use of force. We saw the video, the young man was on the floor, the officer had his knee in the young man's chest. It was quite alarming to see such an aggressive response from the JCF with a child of that age.
And what is disappointing for us, for me personally, is the fact that the public, some members of the public, could be asking the question, what the pitney do that would justify that level of force. And just to quickly put in context, apparently the father was pulled over by the police for some traffic violation. Some dispute occurred during the exchange with the police officers. Things perhaps got heated a little bit. This 11-year-old child, I believe his name is Fitzroy Jr., his father is also Fitzroy, would have witnessed his father in this heated exchange. He got emotional, and by the way, a young sister was in the back of the vehicle. He got emotional because in his mind, apparently, the mother left them. The mother is apparently overseas. He's saying, this is my one parent that I have. Leave my father alone. Apparently, the child hit the officer. All right. What is a reasonable response to an 11-year-old child, a skinny little boy as well, unarmed? What could that child action necessitate that threat of harm to the officer that would require not only the child being subdued in a way that had him on the ground, as you said, the knees in the chest. That child was also pepper sprayed by the officer. And for those who know the effect of pepper spray, it meant that the child was begging the officer for some water, and he was denied. At what point do we say as a society that yes, police officers must defend themselves, but again, it's an 11-year-old child? How do we assess the threat of harm in every situation to say that proportionality is key? Some things are simply not there to be defended. This is an excessive use of force, and what JFJ called for is that the police commissioner must speak on it. Every time we see these videos, you hear nothing from the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Silence is unbecoming. At some point, the Jamaica Constabulary Force must say to us, the public, that we have investigated this matter, this is the outcome, and these are the disciplinary measures that we have put in place based on the situation. Anything else is saying to us, the public, that I stand in support of officers who do this type of behavior, this type of harm, rather. And I think as Jamaicans, we have to say that, no, we're not going to stand feet, though. We have to get to that stage. But that is the recap. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that somber recap, Mikkel. I will go straight into our right of the day. Did you know? Our right of the day. This episode is related to your right to seek, disseminate, and distribute information, opinions, or ideas through any media. And this means that as a Jamaican citizen, you should be able to ask for information that you need, receive that information, and then share that information with others as you would so desire. Now, we have a couple of pieces of legislation that help us to achieve this right, and one of those is our Access to Information Act, which allows for the Jamaican citizen to ask government agencies questions related to any function of that agency that is not classified or related to national security. So we encourage you to utilize it if it is that you have any questions that need clarification in relation to how your government functions. And then we'll ask our trivia question for today, which is how many members make up the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee? This one might be a bit difficult for you to get because it took me a while to find the answer.
Well, you gave it to the public.
I gave it to the public, yes. So we'll see how the public does.
For those of you who watch PBC, you can quickly find that out, man.
Yes. So if you're informed, you'll get your answer quickly. So you can respond by sending us a WhatsApp at 2397583, or you can send us a message on our Instagram at JA for Justice.
All right. Thank you so much, Jade, for your difficult questions, giving people research on all of these things. But just to get straight into today's topic, which we have titled Tabling Process for Parliamentary Reports, Understanding the Challenges with the Tabling of the Integrity Commission and the Auditor General's Reports. Now, for the past several weeks, there have been concerns being raised around the procedures related to the tabling of reports in Parliament undertaken by the current House Speaker, the Honourable Juliet Holness. The Speaker recently announced in Parliament that annual and special reports by the Integrity Commission and those of the Auditor General would go to the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee for the Integrity Commission set for the deliberation first and then be tabled in Parliament along with the committee's report. And for those pertaining to the Auditor General, you may see a delay of up to 60 days before such report is tabled in the House. Holness says that the reports on the investigations by the Integrity Commission will be tabled as soon as possible after submission to Parliament. I don't know what as soon as possible means, but just to put some things in context regarding the framework that the House Speaker has utilized. The House Speaker makes reference to Section 73D of the Standing Orders of the House. She also makes reference to Section 30 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, the FAA Act, to say that there are provisions which suggest that one can be delayed for up to 60 days and the other for 30 days. I also want to put in context for the listeners that we are guided by the Constitution in this country. The Auditor General reports directly to Parliament, and that is under Section 122 of the Constitution of Jamaica. We're also guided by the Integrity Commission Act, and if you look at Section 5 of the Integrity Commission Act, it makes note of the relationship of the Integrity Commission to Parliament.
Now, Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal and the National Integrity Action would have expressed concerns about the decisions to deviate from long-standing parliamentary procedures related to the tabling of reports and emphasize the importance of public understanding and transparency when making those changes. Now, Ms. Caldat Jamp would have expressed doubt about these changes in the process and cited some shortcomings and mistakes in the handling of reports by the former House Speaker. It is argued that the changes that we are contemplating now will cause delays in public access to anti-corruption reports. And furthermore, there is a concern that the ruling, so the sections that Ms. Jackson just mentioned, that the Speaker is relying on, she may be erroneously relying on these sections and have misinterpreted their application. So we're going to be breaking that down today. But it was asked for advice to be given from the Auditor General to determine whether or not this interpretation...
From the Attorney General.
From the Attorney General, my bad, to determine whether or not these changes are sound. So we are joined by Miss Jeanette Calder, and Professor Trevor Monroe. Again, Jeanette is the Executive Director at Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, and Professor Monroe is the founding director at National Integrity Action. Welcome to you both.
Thank you very much, Jade. Thank you, Mikhail. Afternoon,
Thank you,
Trevor.
sir. Thank you for having us. Hi, Jeanette.
Good afternoon to you both. Jeanette, you wrote an article in the paper and you asked two profound questions that I want to read to the listeners before I ask you to comment on your thought behind those questions. And it goes, what do we do when we live in a constitutional democracy and those we have elected and employed to act on our behalf operate in a manner that opposes the very tenets of the Constitution and the principles of our democracy? You also ask, what do we do when our laws and Constitution are being abrogated by legislators in the very midst of their invocation for those said laws to be honored? Those were the two questions you asked.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to know what your thought process was, why you framed those two questions as the opening to your article.
If I'm not going to overthink it, Mikhail, and I just answer straight from my heart more than my head, JAMP had sent out a press release, I think, almost 2 weeks ago, where we were expressing the concerns for what we thought were some unilateral decisions being taken by the Speaker, meaning that I have no difficulty, and nobody listening, I think, would, with the persons who make the laws reviewing and thinking that there might be something that they were doing that they shouldn't have been doing. I am encouraged by that kind of review. But when we have a situation where I live in a democracy and I am aware of legal opinions that say if these changes are to be made, they are not to be made by one. The people of Jamaica have elected and employed and are paying 63 MPs. They represent us. Their voices, their opinion have been missing from this ruling. So I was deeply disturbed by that because I live in a democracy. And when I begin to see a situation where the voice of one is drowning out others whose job it is to examine and to make sure the right decision is being made, I get nervous, Mikhail, and not just because of the situation in front of us. I watch the History Channel like many of your listeners long enough and do a little bit of history, enough to know that when persons with power begin to abuse it, and I'm saying that today because if the law doesn't say the Speaker alone has the right to make this decision, and the Speaker alone is making the decision, then there is an abuse of power. Wherever you see anybody, whether it's the security guard who is letting you in or the Speaker of the House abusing power, you have to do what you can to say, hold on a minute, let's put this in check, because if we don't put it in check, we are going to wake up weeks or months from now and something has changed that is more difficult for citizens to fix than if we nip it in the bud right now. So why I ask those questions? I am answering the question for myself. What do we do if we think there is an abuse of power? I'm trying to answer it as I go, but one thing I know, Michael, is we cannot be silent. And that's the reason I accepted your invitation today, and that's the reason I wrote about it, because we have to find our voices and let how we feel. Whether we're just nervous and we just want to say it and leave it there, it's worth hearing Jamaicans talk about how they feel about this.
Thank you so much. We're going to take the break, but on the other side of the break, Prof, I want you to also share your views on the implications of the House Speaker's action. But for those who don't follow parliamentary procedures enough as we ought to as citizens, I want to get a sense of what exactly is the role of the House Speaker as we break down what the challenges would be with her actions that she has taken. So I take the break.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We are breaking down the tabling process of parliamentary reports and discussing some of the challenges raised around the tabling of the Integrity Commission and Attorney General's reports. In Parliament, we are joined by Jeanette Calder, Executive Director at JAMP, and Professor Trevor Monroe, Founding Director at NIA. Professor Monroe, before the break, we just wanted to get firstly from you, what is the role of the House Speaker? What can the House Speaker do? And then we want to talk about what are the challenges with the unilateral decisions that she would have made in relation to these reports.
Permit me, if you may, to go back to an observation that Janet made in relation to the question, what do we do if we believe or feel that laws or conventions or practice are being violated against the rights of the people? And I want to take us back just 2 days to the very significant presentation by Prime Minister Holness to the conference of the Jamaica Labour Party, where he made an observation that has been insufficiently noticed. And I want to quote from him. Jamaica is the oldest democracy in the black world, end of quote. I go further than that. We qualified to become the oldest democracy because we won the right for persons over 21, male or female, to vote in 1944 by virtue of advocacy, by virtue of struggles, by virtue of the coming together of Jamaicans from different classes and outlooks. But beyond that, not only in black world, people should be recalling that that advocacy and those efforts by our forefathers 80 years ago put us as not just the oldest democracy in the black world, but we got that right to vote ahead of mature democracies, as we often refer to them, as like France. We got it ahead of the United States, 20 years ahead of the United States, and ahead of Canada. What the Prime Minister did not go on to say, and he were developing the point, he would, I'm sure, have said that preserving and strengthening the laws, the conventions and practices which allowed us and still allow us to be among the oldest democracies in the world is not only related to the right to vote, but to do all of those things that our Constitution requires of us in relation to those whom we elect, those who run the government, and those who we have to hold accountable, because democracy is not just that very important right to vote. And in that context, I refer us, as I think you did, Michael, at the opening, to our Constitution. And our Constitution, with the basic rules which are more important than the foundation of the standing orders of the House of Parliament, the foundation of any law, makes it very, very clear what the role of the Parliament is. It's not only to make law for the peace, order, and good government of Jamaica, but it is to hold the executive, the cabinet, and the ministries, departments, and agencies, and the public bodies whom the cabinet is charged to direct and control. It is to hold them collectively responsible to the Parliament. So the Speaker is simply the presiding officer. The body that holds our elected representatives to account is the Parliament. And that Parliament is what the reports that are being referred to, the Auditor General's report, the report from the Integrity Commission, each of those two laws governing the Integrity Commission as well as the Auditor General, which is in the Constitution, Section 122, require that the reports be sent to Parliament. The Speaker is simply a conduit. The Speaker simply receives it and puts it to Parliament and through Parliament to us, the people, because it is our responsibility to hold the executive, the ministers, departments, agencies, and all the 140 public bodies to make sure that they're spending the tens of billions of dollars from us in a manner that is proper and in a manner does not serve in a corrupt way to enrich public officers illicitly in breach of the law. Yes. So I want to emphasize the point that the Parliament is the authority. Mm-hmm. The Speaker is simply the chairperson of the Parliament, and whatever the standing orders say, whatever the finance administration and accountability, or whatever legislation says, it has to align with that foundational responsibility which allows us to continue to be among the oldest democracies in the world, not only because we still have the right to vote or to move and choose who we want to be in the Parliament, but because the Parliament itself is accountable to us, and that accountability function is exercised in part through bodies like the Auditor General's Office, the Integrity Commission, the Office of the Public Defender, INDECOM, and the other independent agencies that are there to make sure that those who get elected don't believe they can do as they want without reference to any law or without reference to the Constitution.
Thank you so much, Prof. You know, one of the things, the patterns we see emerging, and I guess it's a creature, perhaps one could argue, of the parliamentary democracy, is that somehow the Parliament that should have the functions that you outlined earlier seems to be operating in the reverse, where decisions are being taken by the executive branch of government, and then we hear about it, not even in Parliament thereafter, but via the media. Case in point, again, the Office of the Political Ombudsman. So, I'm happy that Prof outlined it in a manner that I hope the listeners are taking note of. But I want to ask you a question, Jeanette. People are listening on and say, what is the big deal? Mm-hmm. We're going to be hearing what is in the report eventually. Mm-hmm. So what is the fuss about when you talk about whether it is delayed for 60 days or 30 days? Why is it such an issue?
Well, I believe if there was one organization I would understand when I say I believe in my rights, and I have a difficulty when someone is going to, especially if it's a right that I've had for well over 100 years and you're going to take it from me, you need to give me. The idea that the burden of proof is on me to say why it's important is bothersome to me, Mikhail. I've had this right of over 100 years. The burden of proof is on you to tell me why I should be denied it. So, tabling of reports is something I discovered at my gray old age. In 2016, I remembered when I was doing some research, and I discovered, Mikhail, that whenever I am opening my paper or listening to a program like this or watching TV and I hear that, tabled in the House of Parliament, my ears never used to prick up. You know why? I didn't know those reports were intended for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that these are reports that are automatically mine. I thought these were things that is the job of the parliamentarian, the power people. I thought these were things that the media get. But when I discovered not only that these reports are intended for me, remember, the parliamentarians are merely representing us. We send them there because the whole of us can pack up in the parliament. The media is there every Tuesday and every time there's a sitting because we all can pack up there. So those reports are ours. But the easiest and quickest way to get it to us is to our representatives and the media, who then filter out what it is they think we need to know. And if we want the details, I can call Parliament right now and say, can I have a copy? And it will be provided. Why? Because it is the people's. So Right now, I own 146 public companies. When I drive past NHT, me no want nobody tell me say that's a government building.
Yes.
It's mine. I am a shareholder. The money that is in there is also partly mine. So when there's a report on the performance of the NHT, I want to know about it. And I want to get it the minute that report is tabled because it's been that way for 100 years. So my question to the Parliament, Mikhail, is why suddenly is there a need for me to wait? And if you can't give me a good reason, then I am not willing to change the right that I had to this report. 146 public companies are mine. 12 executive agencies belong to the whole of us. Is our taxes financing the 15 ministries and all them projects and programs? So if the Auditor General or the Integrity Commission has an anti-corruption report, which is coming to tell me how to protect my assets, I don't think I should wait. I want it now. Tell me why I should have to wait. That is my answer to the Parliament. And I can't think of any reason why we should wait. Do you know why, Mikhail? Because the Speaker of the House has already said, I cannot change the report. So if I'm going to get a report and I can't change it, I have to give it to the parliamentarians. My question back to the Speaker is, so why are we holding on it? And last but by no means least, as it relates to the Auditor General's report, there is nothing in the law that says a minister is to get all the Auditor General's reports. It's only one kind of report. So the three of them they held on to were held unlawfully. And so the people of Jamaica must demand that their laws are protected and they're honored by the Parliament who makes them. Yeah?
Before I bring in Prof, two things. There was an earthquake apparently just now.
What are you saying to me?
We were here trying
did
to
you go under
remain
the desk?
all professional. Jane almost went under the desk. I'm
is the
here
template.
seated still.
And I'm being called to get out of this house.
I did not notice.
There was
Oh,
an.
my
I didn't
word.
notice either.
I think Jeanette's passion, you know.
I'm telling you, I missed it all together, Mikhail. I was deep in thought.
We're going to have to go to the break, but one of the things I wanted to pick up on, and then we go to Prof, is you asked the question why the delay, and if it is that the Parliament can't do anything with the report, they can't change it.
Right.
What do you think is the objective, the thought process behind that delay? Is the
Okay.
question I wanted to quickly
Okay.
talk on, and then
Okay.
we go to Prof. We take the break though. Please bear with
Sure.
us. We're here with Professor Trevor Monroe, Founding Director of National Integrity Action, Executive Director of Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, Jeanette Caldo, and we're discussing the tabling of reports by the Integrity Commission and the Auditor General. Before the break, Jeanette, I just wanted you to answer a question. If the reports are delayed for the time period proposed by the House Speaker, what, if anything, can a minister do with it? For the Integrity Commission report, what, if anything,
Right.
can the Oversight Committee do with it that could perhaps justify that delay period?
Well, I'm going to quote what the Minister of Information said, and, I can provide maybe the date after. But he was asked that question by a journalist on an afternoon public affairs program. And I literally heard the minister speak to the reputation. We've been discussing the reputation of ministers for 5 years now.
So the
yes,
delay-
yes. He said, I am just giving it to you as I got it. He said that there is a concern for the reputation of the ministers, and he actually did use the word fixing the report would be necessary. And I said, but somebody needs to let the Minister of Information know that there is no right in law for that to be fixed. It doesn't work like that. So that is an answer I heard provided by the Minister of Information. What I would say is that, Michaela, jump by, our internal policies. Speculation is something we avoid at all costs.
Yes.
We really like to talk about what's in black and white and what we can unpack. So for a good little while from July when they started up, people have been speculating, and the government puts the people in a position where they have to, because it's just not making any sense to what's happening. However, when we got 2 Fridays ago a copy of the legal opinion of the Parliament's lawyer, the first line might be telling us something that is not speculative. It tells us, and I find this extraordinarily disturbing, and I said it in the article, we've been talking about tabling reports and discussing and all of that for 8 months. From February, the former Speaker had instructed the Clerk of the House that any Auditor General reports come, the minister must get it for 2 months. And it must not be laid until those 2 months pass if they don't get it back from him. From February.
So we don't even know if there were other reports at the time that perhaps were delayed, because the AG wouldn't be operating like the Integrity Commission that would indicate that a report was submitted.
The same opinion tells us that the Auditor General didn't know of this change in how her reports would be treated until June. So it's concerning to me that from February, a speaker makes the decision, instructs the parliament, and it's only until 5 months later we hear that, okay, this is the position and we will get an opinion on it. That is problematic. But what is interesting is that in February, there really was a legitimate concern that arose around how reports are tabled. And this had to do with the Prime Minister's reports. You and your listeners would recall that the Prime Minister was subjected, I would even say unnecessarily, to something. And it was quite a learning curve. Now, something needed to be done to ensure that doesn't happen again. However, this is not the way it is supposed to be done. So I see a connection in terms of the timing. In February, there was the concern about how the Prime Minister, the report on the Prime Minister was tabled, which caused him, his office, and the country some disrepute. And in that very same month, for the first time in our history, changes were made to how these reports are tabled. So it's fair, Michael, to say there is a connection between what had happened to the Prime Minister and now. And I understand the need to make sure it happens to no minister and parliamentarian again. But coming to the people, claiming that the law says X when it doesn't is not the way to do it. That is JAM's position, yes?
And thank you, Jeanette. Prof, to your mind, even if the government is going down the road of mitigating reputational harm, is this action by the House Speaker the way to go? That's one. And what do you think is the likely impact or the long-term effect of the House Speaker's decision when you talk about the strength of our democracy and so on?
Well, let us start with your second very important question, Michaela. The Prime Minister himself has quite rightly observed that the levels of trust in our institutions have been declining over some time. And if you look at the data, it's at an all-time low. Trust and confidence in our parliament, in our parliamentarians, in our other institutions is dangerously low, because what that means is that if people don't feel the institutions are working, then what bother with them? We could just get rid of them. And of course, we have seen in democracies across the world, most recently in the Netherlands and other countries that have established democracies, that there's a turn to leaders who make short thrift of the parliament and other institutions, and they turn to one-man rule. So we have to be very, very careful that whatever we do not only does not foment more distrust and make people wonder, but it's why they don't hold up the report so.
Right.
Why they don't let it go right away?
Right.
It's something that has been going on for decades. Under Siaga, the reports were tabled. Under Michael Manley, the reports were tabled.
Right.
Under Bruce Golding, the reports were tabled. Under the first Andrew Holness administration up until 2020, it was tabled. So how come all of a sudden reports that the Parliament used to see, that we used to get access to, all of a sudden you say, no, you have to hold on to it for a certain period of time? Let us be clear. The way too many democracies are going in the world today, delay can lead to denial.
Yes.
If you get away with holding the reports for 2 months or 3 months, why not hold it for 6 and, why not just hold it indefinitely, since very few people are, bawling out about this thing, which leads me to Jeanette's important question. What do? We learn from our experience, and our experience continues to teach us that when we see wrongs, we must stand up for what is right.
Yes.
I refer to the very, very important recent presentation by former president of the PSOJ, Howard Mitchell. We have to stand up and we have to be counted. And when we do that, let's be clear, just look over the last 3 months. On September the 14th, government proposes a massive increase of 179% in senators' stipend. September 27th, it has to be withdrawn. Why?
Right.
Hand of man. Hand of
Right.
man.
Yes.
We talk out, we stand
Right.
up. Look at what happened again. October 5th, this extraordinary distressing behavior at Crab Circle. People ball out. November 23, Crab Circle is reopened with an appropriate regimen ensuring that proper sanitary facilities are observed. And if you want a third example, let us look. Corporal Rohan James, extraordinary authoritarian action on the part of the police. Interdicted, 3/4 pay, hand over your ID, don't leave the island except to get the permission of the Governor General, and unless you get, by November 17th, the Supreme Court says no, immediate reinstatement. So what do? We stand up, we talk out, we use the rights of our democracy to speak, the right of the media to investigate and to publish what they find, and ultimately, of course, because our parliamentary democracy is a constitutional democracy, where the Speaker, the Prime Minister, Janet Calder, Michael, everybody is subject ultimately to the constitutional rules of the court, which determines to what extent we are behaving in a proper or an accountable and a democratic way. So I think that we're at a point now where I think Janet makes the observation in her article. We use the avenues and the JAMP website. We use the social media. We use the talk shows. And we write letters and do all that we have that right to do as among the oldest democracies in the world, so that this Speaker's decision is reversed. We're not putting up with delay and ultimately tempt those who want to deny to go ahead and do that. Not acceptable.
But you know, Prof, I see a dangerous trend emerging from some public officials, though. I remember a couple months ago, I believe it was NIA and another agency was on a radar program. And I heard a cabinet minister come on shortly after to say that agencies are spreading lies to go overseas to beg money. Recently, there was an attack, I believe, verbally on JFJ by said minister, calling us criminal defenders. So, in my mind, that's undermining the role of civil society to do the very work that you're saying. I also see another dangerous trend emerging that would suggest that the Constitution is somehow an inconvenience to the government, wherein one can circumvent it to get what it wants. I don't know if you have any comment or if you share those concerns regarding what can citizens do to ensure that these things don't continue.
I think I share your concern very considerably and significantly. And the minister who says that civil society organizations are doing things in order to beg money overseas should first have a word with his colleague Minister Nigel Clark and ask Nigel, why is it that he and previous administrations have put us through the sacrifices that we have had to endure, very low pay increases over the public service for so long, not only recently but in the past, if it is not because of the recognition that no island is an island unto itself, no man is an island, and all of us belong in an international community where certain rights and freedoms are assigned and we subscribe to them, including the International Convention for Human Rights, which of course gives us all the right to speak. And we therefore practice in our country what successive administrations, including Jamaica, have signed up to, namely to speak out when there are violations of law and to actually stand up when our Constitution is being breached. So we're not doing what we're doing because we wish to have money from abroad. We do what we do because we want to preserve Jamaica as among the oldest democracies in the black world and in the wider world, and because we want to make sure that the Jamaican people's right to speak freely, to assemble freely, to go to the courts and seek redress, that those rights are not whittled away. And most of all, in relation to our current conversation, the right to information in a timely fashion. So that's what civil society organizations do, and it's very, very similar to the our government and other governments in the world who seek assistance where appropriate and provide assistance when it is needed, as we are now doing in relation to our sisters and brothers who are beleaguered in Haiti at the present time. And of course, we will see that too many instances of behaving in a manner inconsistent with the spirit of the Constitution and, in a sense, seeking loopholes. And the one that comes immediately to mind is, I believe, the one that you pointed out, Michael and JFJ, which attracted that abusive comment from the minister, namely the renewal of a state of emergency in a manner which bypassed the intent of the Constitution regarding an extension of a state of emergency, that it needs to have been brought to Parliament, and the Parliament needs to have discussed it first of all and voted on it. In this case, a stratagem was evolved that found a way to put a state of emergency in a particular section of our country, in St. James, extend it beyond the 14-day limit in a manner that avoided the intent of the Constitution that we all are aware of. And of course, there are other cases which are pending. The other one that is immediately comes to mind is the manner in which the Constitution was abused, in my opinion, in respect to the extension of the tenure of the Director of Public Prosecution. Without any comment on the performance of that particular officer, one has to say that our Constitution, the spirit and intent, was not that the fundamental law of the land should be amended by virtue of the particular minister coming to the Parliament, and the same afternoon the amendment is being brought to the attention of parliamentarians, or be more specific, the opposition, and passed similarly in the Senate. That's not what our Constitution makers intended. With all the flaws in our Constitution, and there are so many that need to be remedied, that's not one of the intents, that we should be able to amend it in a Nicodemus way, as was done in that respect. So we have to be concerned that we're seeing long-standing practices going back to every prime minister, including the present one prior to this administration, being reversed without sufficient, adequate reason, and in instances, in this case of the tabling of reports, in violation of the spirit of the Constitution that was intended. So we have to be concerned. I mean, we go beyond concern. We have to speak up, we have to stand up, and we have to do what has been necessary in the past for individual officers of government and administrations to reverse positions which were inappropriate, unlawful, and in some instances unconstitutional. Our standing up does work, outcry does matter. If we keep silent, abuses are going to be strengthened, delay might just turn into denial.
Very well
and what
said.
Trevor is describing there is not a Jamaican situation. It's just how power and politics works anywhere in the world. It's human nature. If you give it an inch, it will take a yard. And just for me, Mikhail, to just make a quick point.
Yes, I was going to give you the last word because we have to
no,
close
it's just
out.
a very quick one, which is to ask the citizens listening to just think on this. I think both Trevor and the organization he represents and JAM are completely for parliamentary oversight and it working well. NIA just finished a year's research and provided recommendations on how to strengthen the work of the parliament. So we support the speaker's intent, right, to make it more efficient. However, it is a concern for JAM that there are a number of other issues around tabling reports, because these anti-corruption reports are not the only reports that go to Parliament. The Children's Advocates, Indicom, whole bag of reports go. And I am a little concerned that if we are going to look at the issue of tabling reports, that the attention has been confined and limited to the anti-corruption reports, and that the delay would only be affecting only those kinds of reports. Were they drawing on all the recommendations that NIA made only a month ago? I wouldn't feel so bad.
Yes.
But it does beg the question, why these reports and not a more comprehensive look at fixing the issue of parliamentary efficiency as it relates to tabling of all the reports coming to the House. It's a worthwhile question for us to ask and to contemplate.
Yes, nicely said. Thank you so much, Jeanette Calder, Executive Director of JAMP, Professor Trevor Monroe, Founding Director of NIA. Thank you so much to you both, as usual.
We appreciate being with you today.
Thank you for having us, and all the best.
Have a good day. We take the break. Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. I almost said Jamaicans for Justice, but it's one and the same,
You've
I
been
guess.
gone for a little bit too long.
Very good discussion with Professor Trevor Monroe and Jeanette Calder. We're going to be watching Parliament today because there is an Integrity Commission report that we need to get a sense of who are the persons under investigation. I think there are 4 reports that we expect to be tabled. I don't know if the counting of those 30 days, as said by the House Speaker, would mean that we won't see those reports for a little while. But remember, Parliament goes on break shortly, so
Yes.
that's another matter for us to really examine. And there are some things. Oh, by the way, an update. The government, I think last week you held that interview for us, the Samoa Agreement.
Yes.
JFJ, we got an invitation from the Minister of Foreign Affairs. There's a meeting this Thursday, and we will try our utmost to attend that meeting to lend our voice. The consultation is coming a few years after, but we will make our presence there as well to raise our concerns regarding the delay and to hear from the minister what the thought process of the government was regarding whatever language is in the report versus how we could possibly undermine our constitution and our moral compass as a country. So
Indeed.
that is something that we're going to be at this week. Now, last week, we had the SOE coming to an end in St. James. I think it was a Thursday, midnight.
Yes.
Friday morning, I woke up, Jade, after 7.
Yes.
Another SOE declared, effective 12:01 a.m. I don't know if the Prime Minister, the Governor General and so on was awake when it says effective 12:01. But so for me, a couple hours elapsed, and then you had what I call a rolling SOE in St. James, which to our mind at JFJ is a clear intention of the government to circumvent the constitutional requirement that would have required 2/3 majority vote at both the lower and the upper house, which means when you go to the upper house, at least one opposition senator would have to vote in support of this. Government circumvented that. In their mind, it's not a rolling SOE because guess what? They tag a few parishes along with it. One of those parishes, by the way, the crime rate has been on the decline, so I don't get a sense of why the SOE was declared. I think that was either Clarendon, I believe. I don't want to misquote, but not one of those parishes. So again, very nervous actions from the government. I believe it suggests a government that is autocratic in its tendencies, and we ought to be careful as a country. But another thing that emerged last week, and in the interest of time...
Just before you move on
Yes.
with the SOE, one of the issues that we've consistently raised with the SOE is the availability of the governing regulations for each. I just checked before
Still not
while
up.
you were talking. We don't have access to.
And you went on all of the multiple
went
platforms,
on Parliament's website, the
OPM,
OPM, and
Justice.
the Ministry of Justice website, and I was
Nothing.
unable to find it. Now, if it is there somewhere else, I don't know where that would be, and I can't
But
seem
it's
to find any
concerning that
mention
as
of it.
citizens, though, that rely on knowing what the powers... By the way, if... another thing, we made a concerted effort to call the Jamaica Constabulary Force to get a sense of where the review tribunal is. And you go around in circles. So if it is a time detained under the SOE and I say, hey, where's the review tribunal that I can raise my objection to? The police don't know. So who knows? Has that review tribunal been convened? And again, it goes back to the regulations. Food
Yes.
for thought. Yeah?
Indeed.
Yeah. And by the way, the Cornwall Bar Association also raised similar concern about the possibility of indefinite detention under the SOE that has no governing regulations. But again, I'm sure before the 14 days expire, we will see regulations popping up with an effective date when it was announced, yeah?
Indeed.
Subjected to a couple lawsuits, I'm sure, because that is a great foundation for people to sue the government. Now, in another minute, I just want to quickly discuss that the Prime Minister, while speaking to party supporters at the Jamaica Labour Party conference on Sunday, announced the Ministry of Peace and Human Development. And I'm trying to say that ministry with a straight face.
You're not succeeding. Her face is not straight, listeners.
Ministry of Peace and Human Development. And I asked the question immediately when I heard, to what end? On what basis? So the Prime Minister's thought process is, let's put together all of the violence prevention efforts and so on. You know, we're waiting on the report from Professor Maureen Sams-Vaughan regarding the types of interventions that exist within the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Education, Gender, National Security. But my question is, what is the purpose of the Ministry of National Security if such a ministry were to be established? Given that half of the duties of the Ministry of Justice, maybe not half, but a number of the duties, several, have been redirected to the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. If you take the Restorative Justice Program, Child Diversion Program to this newly established ministry, what is the purpose of the Justice Ministry? What have you withered it down to? Food for thought. Why are we going to be paying another possible $600 million for a new ministry when that $600 million could have been pumped into the very violence prevention programs? Makes no sense for us. We don't support it. We say to the government, stay the course, go and strengthen the programs that already exist. Speaking on a radio program this morning, Jade, I made reference to, I hope you read it by now because I told you to read that report, by the way, the 1994 Wolf Report.
Yes, I have read it.
It outlines every single action that the government ought to stay the course and go straighten the JCF, give the JCF intelligence resources to do intelligence policing, community policing, put the funds into justice reform so that when the matters go before the courts, the things can be adjudicated quickly. Focus on the family through the National Parenting Support Commission. Make sure the people get the money to do the work. Why are we not focusing on existing things? Stop talking about domestic violence. Go and fix the Domestic Violence Act that has been languishing. Broaden the scope of it to deal with interpersonal family violence as well. Why are we not doing it? Why are we reinventing the wheel to go pay another minister the big salary, another permanent minister, secretary, sorry. Then you're going to perhaps put a state minister to it. All of the technical people go put together a website, pay a logo, and all of these website kind of things. Why waste resources like that? Prime Minister, respectfully, this is not the way to go. That is it.
And we sign off with that impassioned plea. We do have a winner for a trivia. It's Kimmy. We'll reach out to you via DM.
And she answered quickly, by the way.
Yeah, she answered very much quicker than I thought. It's Kimmy's better than me. Clearly, she's been watching the committees, and we love it.
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week at 1 p.m. And next week is an exciting week for us. We have several events, and we'll see all our listeners at the Halfway Tree Transport Center on Friday, December 8th. To get some information and to make your complaints and to learn about JFJ and to walk in the street with us. We'll be doing all of that Friday, December 8th. So we look forward to you joining us, and we'll see you next week. I'm Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
I'm Michael Jackson. Have a good Tuesday.